we boast some of the most watched teams in the nation. Today's hearing about sports broadcasting isn't just a Texas issue. It's a national one. In an era of deep partisan division, sports might be the most powerful cultural unifier that we have. Whether on the couch or in the stands, Americans come together to cheer, to hope, to believe. But those millions of fans are asking a simple question. Why does it seem to be getting harder and more expensive to just watch the game? For years, sports viewing has become more splintered, requiring multiple apps and subscriptions just to watch a single franchise's entire season. The app or TV channel that a fan uses one week to watch a game doesn't necessarily work the next week. It's frustrating and it's annoying for the dedicated sports fans. Such market disruption is not only expected, it can be a sign of innovation. The key is recognizing that and figuring out how to adjust as we go. Importantly, we should be cautious about saddling streaming services with outdated cable-era regulations, something that might do more harm than good. The shift to streaming isn't just frustrating. It can be expensive. Between league-specific packages and games behind different streaming paywalls, it can cost hundreds of dollars a year for a hardcore fan wanting to watch all of the league's games. If fans want to spend their hard-earned money on sports streaming, I don't blame them. I've shelled out a hell of a lot of money to see the Houston Rockets and the Astros and the Texans, and I intend to continue doing so. But given that sports can get special treatment under the law, whether it be antitrust protection, nonprofit status, or taxpayer financing of stadiums, what do fans deserve in return? This is a particularly important question for this committee, which has jurisdiction over telecommunications and broadcasting. In 1961, Congress enacted the Sports Broadcasting Act to grant professional leagues antitrust immunity as it relates to negotiating national broadcast deals on behalf of their teams. This structure allows leagues to negotiate from centralized offices in a synchronized manner without violating antitrust laws. The SBA was intended to ensure that the needs of all sports fans were being met. I think it's important to regularly revisit and consider whether our laws, like the Sports Broadcasting Act, are actually fulfilling their intended goals. And if the leagues can show how the SBA continues to benefit fans today, it may be worth exploring whether to give a similar exemption to college sports, whose broadcasting rights have no antitrust protection. One growing concern is that the NFL has used its special exception in the SBA to the frustration of college and high school football schedulers. For example, the SBA explicitly excludes antitrust protection for the NFL if broadcasting a game on Friday night or a Saturday between mid-September and mid-December. That's to protect the interest of high school and college football and ultimately their fans, who are no doubt also followers of the NFL. The NFL has tiptoed up to this rule, Now putting a game on streaming on Black Friday afternoon, which used to be reserved for prominent football rivalries, including in some years when I was a kid, Texas versus Texas A&M. There are millions of sports fans who like being able to follow high school and college and professional football without having to choose amongst them. It's partly why Congress wrote the SBA in the manner it did. Professional sports holds a unique space in our culture. They wear our colors, carry our hopes, and represents our cities and towns. Sports teams may be run like businesses, but to fans, they're sacred institutions. They're public trusts, and it's why taxpayers have been willing to shell out their money to build stadiums and arenas for pro football and baseball and basketball and hockey. In exchange, fans are right to ask if these teams have a civic responsibility to their communities that includes making games accessible. I look forward to hearing from each of the sports leagues today on how the fan experience is changing, how fans are benefiting from new broadcasting landscapes, and just as importantly, what responsibilities teams have to the public when taxpayer funding or special legal rights are granted to them. Streaming may well be the future, but it shouldn't sideline the fans. I now turn to the ranking member for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the witnesses this morning here for this hearing. Before we start on this subject, I want to express my strong opposition to the efforts by the Trump administration last week to undermine critical resources for local broadcasting, that is NPR and PBS, and to fire 3 congressionally appointed board members of the nonpartisan nonprofit Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Every community deserves to have trusted access to local journalism, particularly when it comes to some of our rural areas where programming on these individual channels are very valuable, but quality program for children, certainly emergency alert information. So we want every community, including our rural and tribal areas, to have access. The president's actions last week will hit these communities the hardest and deny residents the access to information that they rely on to keep them safe in emergencies. With this hearing today, Mr. Chairman, obviously we need to find the sweet spot between consumer choice and consumer costs. I recognize the challenging issue that we're going to discuss this morning, but I think Mr. Bergmayer got it right in his testimony when he said consumers see that they finally broke the cable bundle model. He was referring to the fact that now with streaming and different distribution that you have more choice, only to watch it reforming again right between their eyes. That is the subject of this hearing today. And this committee has had a long, long history back to our former chairman, Senator John McCain, where he advocated in many of those big cable broadcast wars for a la carte choice consumers. We now see the same issues coming before us again, but in a different construct. According to Nielsen, the 2024 streaming numbers were that it accounted for 39% of total TV usage in the United States of America, surpassing cable and broadcast television. And this surge in streaming viewers is coupled with a 20% drop in cable and satellite subscribers in the past 15 years. So as you might imagine, this shift has created some disruption, including in the broadcast sports arena. I'm grateful again for our public knowledge witness to highlight how some of these changes really have affected consumers and particularly the fan experience. When I'm back home, I get to turn on the TV and watch the Seahawks on King 5 or Gonzaga basketball with no subscription required. But streaming has put sports content increasingly behind a paywall so that only the subscribers can access that. And with the growing number of exclusivity agreements with sports leagues, the decline of cable bundle, consumers are facing an impossible choice, missing an important game, or managing, as the chairman just mentioned, a confusing array of streaming media subscriptions. So we're here today to hear what it is this committee can do about this issue. It is interesting that the NFL signed a 10-year media rights contract agreement in 2023 that makes Amazon Prime its prime partner for Thursday Night Football. a deal worth $10 billion. Major League Soccer's 10-year deal with Apple brought significant new viewership to sports, with the playoff audiences increasing by 50% in a single year. So all of these issues make us want to ask the questions about what content we used to get to watch for free that now we are paying for, and what, in a world where streaming becomes even easier to get us content, what are we doing to make that content more accessible? During the Paris 2024 Olympics allowed consumers access across the world for the first time to every event live or on demand. Previously, these events had been prioritized or limited because of broadcast channels, and now consumers can watch any sport, any race, any preliminary bout, no matter how many other events are taking place at the same time. I like giving consumer choices. Netflix has the rights to the next Women's World Cup, and the WNBA's 2024 season attracted more than 54 million viewers. There you go for not paying enough attention to women's basketball in the past. 170% increase over the previous season. So there is some good news, and that is that we can cover more. We can give consumers more choice. But I, too, would love to hear from our witnesses how we're making sure that we're protecting consumers while we do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would note the ranking member had some comments on the defunding of NPR, and as some might say, there is the rest of the story. The Communications Act requires public media entities like NPR to strictly adhere to, quote, objectivity and balance in all programs or series of programs on a controversial nature. Unfortunately, NPR does not. Last Congress, I put out a detailed report how NPR took millions in earmarked donations from left-wing mega donors for very specific coverage. After receiving those donations, NPR churned out content precisely mirroring its donors' agendas. Likewise, the congressionally chartered independent television service paid for documentaries like, quote, racist trees to appear on PBS. NPR CEO Catherine Maher continues to deny that NPR has a story selection problem, even when senior editors are resigning because the bias is so overwhelming. Yet NPR continues to have a dedicated news desk for climate and for race, both of which are propped up by liberal mega donors. This is the same woman who in January 2020, months before the death of George Floyd, tweeted, quote, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day. I think it's more than time for some accountability at NPR. I'll now introduce the panel. First, the representatives from each league will talk about their strategies that they're pursuing in media rights negotiations as they aim to reach more fans. Our first witness is Kenny Gersh, Executive Vice President of Media and Business Development at Major League Baseball. Our second witness is Bill Koenig, President of Global Content and Media Distribution, National Basketball Association. Our third witness is David Proper, Senior Executive Vice President of Media and International Strategy, National Hockey League. Our final witness is John Bergmayer, the Legal Director of Public Knowledge, who will discuss these issues from the public benefit and fan perspective. Mr. Gersh, you may begin.
Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and the members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here today to give MLB's perspective on how the sports media ecosystem is evolving. My name is Kenny Gersh, and I serve as Executive Vice President, Media and Business Development for Major League Baseball. In my role, I oversee MLB's relationships with media rights holders and distribution partners, as well as our direct-to-consumer product, MLB.tv. Currently, there are three main ways that we make live MLB games available to fans in the United States: national games, locally broadcast regular season games, and out-of-market regular season games. Looking to the future, as existing contracts expire, We intend to partner with entities that will make our games available to the broadest possible audience and to eliminate territorial restrictions to make our games available to any fan that wants to watch them regardless of location. First, the league itself distributes our jewel events consisting of all postseason games, the All-Star Game, and the Home Run Derby, as well as a package of regular season games that are distributed nationally, consisting of fewer than 10% of the 2,430 regular season games we play each year. Our most important events, the World Series and All-Star Game, along with a package of regular season games, are made available on Fox, an over-the-air broadcast network. We also distribute regular season games and the remainder of our postseason games on TBS and ESPN, two wildly available linear channels. Finally, we work with new media entities, including Apple and Roku, to make a small selection of regular season games widely available to our fans. Second, each club retains the right to distribute their regular season games within their own home television territory, with the exception of the small amount of games that are chosen for national broadcast. The predominant way that MLB clubs have distributed live games to fans in their local markets has been through the pay TV ecosystem via regional sports networks. This system worked well for baseball fans for many years when most households subscribed to a pay TV service. However, over the last decade, as more and more entertainment content began to migrate to streaming services, fewer households subscribed or continued to subscribe to pay TV packages. To make matters worse, as the number of pay TV subscribers continues to decline, pay TV distributors have begun to relegate the RSNs to more expensive tiers or not carry them at all. As a result, the RSN model has begun to crumble. The lack of availability of the RSNs on many pay TV systems, or the need to subscribe to a higher tier to receive them, has created what is known as local blackouts. Finally, the league itself makes all regular season games of every club available outside of each club's home television territory via two subscription products: Extra Innings, which is sold via pay TV providers as an add-on service to their customers, and MLB.TV, which is sold as a direct-to-consumer product by the league and available on all internet-connected devices. In 2024, MLB.TV streamed over 14 billion minutes of live game action to our fans, and we are on pace to surpass this record-setting level in 2025. Overall, the fans' response to MLB.TV has been overwhelmingly positive. However, historic contractual arrangements prevented us from making games available in the club's home television territories, leading to additional fan frustrations with local blackouts. The combination of declining affordable access to regional sports networks via pay TV and the lack of access to fans' home teams' games via MLB.TV or other direct-to-consumer offerings presents obvious challenges and frustrations for fans. Commissioner Manfred identified expanding MLB's reach as one of his top priorities. I'm happy to report that, thanks to the Commissioner's focus on this issue, more MLB games are available to fans than ever before in the history of our sport. After the recent launch right here in Washington by Masson of their own direct-to-consumer service, for the first time ever, 29 of our 30 MLB clubs are now accessible throughout their home television territory via direct-to-consumer offering, virtually eliminating the problem of local blackouts. In addition, we have also been experimenting with other methods of making games more available to fans. For the 2025 season, a majority of our clubs now make a package of games available locally via free over-the-air broadcasts. And on the national level, we make a package of games freely available via the Roku channel. Thank you again for inviting me to testify today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Koenig.
Good morning, Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and members of the committee. My name is Bill Koenig, and I'm the President of Global Content and Media Distribution for the NBA and responsible for the NBA's and the WNBA's media arrangements. I've been with the NBA for 35 years and have focused on distribution of our content, including our live game telecasts, for the majority of that time. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. I'm especially pleased to testify about the NBA's new national media agreements with Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon. Starting next season, our fans will have unprecedented access to more than 300 nationally televised games, 5 times more national game telecasts on free over-the-air networks, and every national game telecast through broadly distributed streaming services. But it wasn't always that way. In the 1960s, our games were rarely seen on national television, and when they were, they were often relegated to segments on ABC's Wide World of Sports rather than as standalone broadcasts. And into the 1980s, our finals games, featuring legends such as Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Julius Erving, were not aired live, but on tape delay at 11:30 p.m. after the local news. We've come a long way. Part of that success comes from a sustained focus on serving our fans by adapting to technological advances and evolving media consumption patterns, which have shifted dramatically over the past decade. 10 years ago, more than 100 million U.S. households subscribed to cable, satellite, and telco providers, and about 60 million households subscribe to streaming services. Today, the number of households that subscribe to those pay TV providers has declined sharply to about 45 million. That's about 1/3 of the households that have access to broadcast television and 1/3 of the nearly 120 million that subscribe to a streaming service. And some of the leading streaming services, like Amazon Prime Video, reach almost twice the number of households than any cable network. As a result, far more video is consumed today through streaming services than through pay television. And this shift is particularly significant for the NBA, which has the youngest average fan base of any major league. These trends were top of mind as we negotiated our new national agreements. One of our top priorities was to ensure that we serve all fans. So for those who watch the NBA on traditional television, we sought to significantly increase the number of games made available nationally on free broadcast television. And for the growing number of fans who use streaming services and digital platforms, we aim to significantly increase the number of games made available through those platforms and to provide them with the many unique benefits that digital distribution enables, including personalized viewing experiences and an array of interactive video and audio options. We believe we achieved the right balance. Under these new agreements, we'll have more national NBA game telecasts than ever before, over 300 games. We'll have an unprecedented number of regular season games on free over-the-air networks, 75, which is 5 times more than under the current deals, and about 2 times the number of playoff games, including every game of the NBA Finals, will air on free over-the-air networks. To serve the growing number of fans who prefer digital platforms, every single national game telecast will also be available through broadly distributed streaming services. And while there will be some games exclusively on Prime Video, it's important to note that Prime Video is the most widely available subscription streaming service in the country, and our analysis shows that nearly 90% of our fans watch non-NBA programming on Prime Video already. The WNBA also entered into national deals with Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon last year. Under those agreements, more WNBA game telecasts will be available nationally on major television networks and streaming services than at any time in the league's history. And from a revenue perspective, these new arrangements represent the largest media deal ever in women's sports. And there's more to come, because the WNBA can do additional national deals and thereby achieve even greater exposure and revenue. The popularity of the WNBA has grown exponentially in recent years, and these arrangements will enable that growth to continue. My written statement addresses 2 other topics. First, the measures we've taken to make our games easier to find and access, and second, the steps our teams have taken to reach more fans with their local telecasts. I don't have time to address those topics in my testimony today, but I am, of course, happy to answer any questions you may have on those topics. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Proper.
Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and members of the committee. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today on behalf of the National Hockey League. My name is David Proper, and I'm the Senior Executive Vice President of Media and International Strategy for the NHL. In that role, I have overseen the NHL's media relationships worldwide for the past 15 years. We appreciate your leadership in examining the evolving sports media landscape and its impact on fans, leagues, teams, media companies, and communities across the country. The NHL is a 107-year-old league with deep roots in North American communities and a strong global presence. In the last few years alone, we have seen record attendance, increased viewership, and substantial growth in youth participation. While we are incredibly proud of this momentum, we are also focused on the continuing responsibility to ensure our games are available to our fans in a manner that fulfills their sports viewing preferences. At the core of our media strategy is a simple idea: meet the fans where they are. In the United States, our national media partnerships allow us to deliver NHL games across a wide array of channels and formats. Live games air nationally on ESPN, ABC, TNT, TBS, and the NHL Network, and on top streaming platforms including ESPN+, Hulu, and Max. Whether on a traditional cable or satellite box, a mobile device, or a smart TV, fans in the United States can access live hockey in more ways than ever before. We are also committed to keeping fans connected to their hometown teams. NHL games continue to be shown regionally through local media partners. While the traditional RSN model has faced recent disruption, we are actively working to support our teams and their partners to respond to changes in the evolving media landscape. Such responses include restructuring existing, often long-standing RSN arrangements, entering into regional agreements with broadcast affiliates, and/or launching digital direct-to-consumer products both on a subscription fee basis and on a free-to-the-consumer ad-supported basis. The market, however, is clearly in a state of flux. Every player in this ecosystem, the leagues, the teams, the distributors, and the platforms, are working to identify the best ways to serve fans in a rapidly changing environment. We believe it is important to allow the market to settle and stabilize so that the long-term sustainable solutions can emerge. As our business continues to grow and expand, our ultimate goal remains the same: to ensure that NHL content remains accessible and affordable for fans. But the fan viewing experience is about more than just platforms. It's also about production and content. In that vein, we are embracing media innovations, including non-traditional broadcast formats serving specific demographic groups, such as animated game broadcasts for children, datacasts for avid stat-focused fans, and American Sign Language game productions for our hearing-impaired fans. We are also focused on producing real-time data overlays, non-game programming content, and personalized viewing options, all of which help us reach broader audiences. We are committed to serving the full spectrum of our audience, whether it is a child watching their first Caps playoff game tonight, a lifelong fan catching a game on their phone during a commute, or a member of the United States military stationed overseas looking for a taste of home. We want the game to be easy to find, easy to follow, and easily available. At the same time, we understand that the way fans access our game continues to evolve and vary widely. Some rely on traditional broadcast systems, while others are embracing new digital platforms. As the media landscape continues to change, we remain focused on ensuring that our content is as accessible and engaging as possible for all fans, wherever and however they choose to watch. For us, this is not a media strategy. Serving our fans is a mission shared by the entire league. After 107 years, the NHL is proud to be evolving and proud to be building a future where hockey reaches more people in more meaningful ways than ever before. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Bergmayer.
Chairman, ranking member, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. Streaming video has benefited viewers in many ways. Millions of Americans have discovered they can get content more cheaply and conveniently through streaming services than with traditional cable or satellite TV. With online video, people can pick and choose services instead of being forced into bloated cable bundles. They can watch on different devices inside and outside the home. Streaming also gives diverse content creators opportunities to reach audiences in ways not possible before. For sports specifically, streaming has brought benefits too. It's easier for fans to watch out-of-market games. Streaming platforms can integrate sports-specific features not possible on broadcast or cable, and it's easier to access sports beyond the major professional leagues. But the transition to streaming hasn't been smooth. The proliferation of services and fragmentation of content means costs are rising. As a ranking member noted, many viewers feel they finally broke free of the cable bundle, only to watch it reform before their eyes. Having to manage various accounts, download multiple apps, and track numerous subscription payments burdens viewers. Apps can be buggy and inconsistent, and there's simply no one place to look to figure out where to watch what you want. To follow their favorite baseball team, a fan might need Apple TV Plus for $10 a month, MLB.TV for $150 per season, and a traditional or virtual MVPD like YouTube TV for about $85 a month at a minimum. And even then, carriage of regional sports networks or sports channels is far from universal, and some games might fall through the cracks. Across many sports, fans might try to watch a game and unexpectedly find it's on a streaming service they don't use. Confusing blackout rules mean games available online in one market might not be available in another, with local teams and playoff games most often affected. Video quality might be poor due to inadequate broadband, and online streams may lag significantly behind real time. Fan frustration is acute because many games once available on free broadcast TV are moving to paid streaming services. Millions of viewers still mostly watch TV through broadcast cable and satellite, especially older viewers with lifelong attachments to teams whose games are now difficult to find. The current market structure is not a consequence of a free market. It results from decades of regulatory arbitrage and market power exploitation. Regional sports networks emerged not from natural market evolution, but as a way for cable operators to evade program access rules. Sports were a major contributor to inflated cable bills in many ways. The collapse of this model is tied to the rise of streaming. As viewers cut the cord, cable companies lose leverage, and leagues can pit streamers against traditional distributors. Let me share a personal example. 2 weeks ago, a Cubs-Phillies game was mistakenly blacked out for me in DC. The game wasn't on broadcast or cable TV locally or nationally and simply shouldn't have been blacked out. MLB's in-app customer service was unresponsive. I eventually resolved it through social media by providing my IP address and zip code for a manual override. This is clearly not sustainable. Streaming is no longer an afterthought. We need to ensure that shifts in media technology and sports benefit viewers with cheaper and more convenient options. Sports have outsized civic, cultural, and economic importance. Teams receive taxpayer subsidies through stadiums and special tax deals. Major leagues enjoy special exemptions from antitrust laws through the Sports Broadcasting Act and Supreme Court decisions. Publicly subsidized sports and teams should clearly communicate to fans where games will be available. They should commit to making games available free of charge in their local market, either on broadcast or free streaming. There's no reason for public money to support private sports organizations without clear public benefit. Further, Congress should consider legislation like the Stop Sports Blackouts Act, which would mandate refunds for channels lost due to disputes. Leagues and policymakers must recognize that easy, affordable access is crucial for the future of sports viewership. Young people no longer discover sports by flipping through channels, so they need to be accessible in other ways. Policies prioritizing immediate profits through exclusive deals and expensive paywalls threaten to alienate existing fans and lose the next generation. More broadly, everyone in the streaming market should focus on providing a good viewer experience rather than customer lock-in. Online video services should recognize that viewers often mix and match services and facilitate this instead of blocking it. Sports in particular show the need for consistency and predictability. Leagues should avoid abrupt changes to how people watch games. They should avoid overly complex licensing that fragments individual sports across a variety of services and move past media deals that penalize local market viewers. Practices that prioritize short-term gain can harm the long-term sustainability of professional sports because people have many other things to watch. MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred said, "We hate blackouts as much as fans do, and that ending local blackouts was business objective number one." He stated, "We need to be out of the business of blackouts, telling people who want to watch games that we won't sell them to you." But this vision hasn't yet come to pass for any of the major sports, and fans continue to face an expensive patchwork of services. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you to each of the witnesses. Let me start with a question to the league. As I mentioned in my opening statement, Congress passed the Sports Broadcasting Act in 1961 to allow leagues to negotiate sports media deals on behalf of all teams as opposed to on a team-by-team basis. Congress granted this antitrust exemption with the intention of benefiting sports fans. How does the SBA actually benefit fans of your sport, whether it's from greater access to games or improved revenue sharing to make for more competitive balance or something else entirely?
Thank you. As you stated, Chairman, the SBA allows us to pool broadcast rights, which has created a fan-friendly, market-efficient practice that's resulted in more output of games as opposed to less. One concrete example from Major League Baseball's perspective is this pooling allowed us to create MLB Advanced Media, where all the clubs together pooled their digital media rights. That allowed us to innovate and revolutionize the viewing experience. We were the first league to be able to stream games at all via the internet, first to computers, then to mobile devices, eventually right to the TV. So we think that's been a really big benefit of being able to take all the resources of the league together to create a product, as opposed to each individual club having to manage apps across multiple operating systems and multiple devices. It's a hard thing to do on a small basis. You really need that economy of scale, so we appreciate the ability to do that. And while, the sports leagues are each comprised of 30, or in some cases 32 different teams that compete with each other on the field, it is important that we act as a single operating entity, and that's why you're able to have, 3 of us here to have this discussion instead of 92. Thank you.
Chairman, we think that we do honor the intention of the Sports Broadcasting Act, and that there is a public service in the way we've organized our media rights, as I mentioned, in our most recent national deals, which is a product of what the Sports Broadcasting Act was intended to do. On a national basis, we were able to license a record number of over-the-air telecasts, free over-the-air telecasts. That benefits all teams in terms of exposure, because the games are available in every market. But also by being able to license games on a league-wide national basis, the revenue is shared equally by each team. So the point you made about revenue sharing, all teams benefit from those national distribution deals equally. Also, to echo what Mr. Gersh said, we're able to innovate by doing things that require scale at the league level. Our League Pass product, which is our out-of-market subscription service, offers fans approximately 14 different feeds of every game, different camera angles, different languages, different stats feeds for analytics, fantasy feeds, celebrity co-viewing experiences, and those things are really only achievable by pooling and doing things on a collective basis.
It's a great question, Senator, and I think that I would echo much of what Mr. Gersh and Mr. Koenig said. The one thing that I would add of substance in terms of what the Sports Broadcasting Act was intended to do was it was intended to make games available to fans at greater accessibility at a lesser cost. That is exactly what it does. If you had, in our case, 32 teams or 25 in the U.S. out there negotiating their own deals on every television market, you would have a complete fragmentation of their rights. A fan who wanted to watch all of the games would be buying from so many different packages, which the costs would be through the roof. What this has allowed us to do, the respective leagues, is to provide the greatest access to fans in the most affordable way possible. And that is, I think, the main intention of the Broadcast Act, where it's been extremely successful.
So the FCC's cable era regulations set regulatory conditions, including rules around operating within a designated market area, as well as syndicated and exclusivity rules, which can lead to blackouts. Streaming platforms aren't bound by these rules, but blackouts still take place on streaming platforms. Why is that the case? And do leagues specifically require streaming platforms to black out games for out-of-market fans?
Thank you. I think the result of the question you're asking is the way our rights are currently split up between the league and the clubs at the current time. Each club has the right to distribute throughout their entire home television territory. So when they do their deals in their market, they're on cable TV, that the league can't then offer the games in their own market. So for our streaming product, we black out in Houston because the Astros are exploiting the rights there. However, as I mentioned in my testimony also, we now are at the moment where 29 of our clubs have their own direct-to-consumer service. So you can now, in pretty much every territory, if you want to watch the games via streaming, you can go buy that service. And if you want to watch all the other games out of market, you can buy MLB.TV. And then those two services complement each other so that it does cover the whole landscape. So I think it's less of a legislative issue and just the way that our rights are currently divided between the league and the club.
Mr. Koenig?
Similarly, with the NBA, we have 3 different types of game distribution packages. We have a national packages, local packages, and out of market. And a fan anywhere in the country can access every game played by his or her favorite team or any other team in the league through a subscription to one or more of these packages. That's the business reality. There's no mandate that games be blacked out. National games, for example, aren't blacked out. But a fan in any market in Houston, for example, can buy the Rockets games locally from the RSNs that's operated by the Astros and the Rockets collectively, and they can watch games of the other teams through buying our League Pass outer market package, and obviously can access the national games. I would say that on the local front, because of some of the issues facing cable with cord cutting, the repositioning of regional sports networks, and just carriage disputes, more and more of our teams, 21 of our 29 domestic teams, have games on broadcast television. It's almost the reverse. I remember in 1992 when the Cable Act was passed, and there was a study about migration from broadcast to cable. You actually referred to that in your opening statement. And now there seems to be a trend. We had this season 570 games on broadcast television, the most in 20 years. And so we are very concerned with accessibility, but any fan can subscribe to services or get them for free in the case of many local and national telecasts to any game that he or she wants.
Mr. Proper.
The NHL is similarly set up as the other two leagues, and we have local rights, we have national rights, and we have out-of-market rights. The local rights, in terms of being blacked out, is structured exactly the same, and you have to think of it as, and if you live in the local market, you get the benefit of getting your teams without having to buy the out-of-market package or anything like that. You get that benefit usually, depending on the circumstance. Most of the games are available on either broadcast or major cable television. That being said, if I'm being completely candid, as Mr. Bergmayer said about Commissioner Manfred, everybody's looking at the future of the models right now. The models are in the state of flux, and whether streaming results in blackouts or blackouts not happening in the future is something that may be addressed by the leagues over the next 5 to 10 years, but it is at this point the current model that has worked and has worked very well. But as we continue to have flux in the system, we're going to have to continue to evaluate.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to Ranking Member Cantwell for putting together this important hearing. As some of you know, my dad was a sports writer and a general columnist, and he wrote 23 books, including the authorized biography of Fran Tarkington. But he wrote one in 1977 that we'll never forget because it's relevant today, and that is, Will the Vikings Ever Win the Super Bowl? That was the name of it. I care a lot about sports. I find
and the answer is?
Yeah, of course they will, Senator Cruz. And I care a lot about sports. I care a lot about how sports brings us together in terms of our local communities. It made a huge difference for our city, for the city of Minneapolis in the last few years after some difficult times. And so I just wanted to start with this, with the local broadcasting issue. And I've gotten all the streaming down. I'll get the Timberwolves tonight, Mr. Koenig, whatever they're on. But I do want to continue to have strong local broadcasting for many reasons, because I think it also brings our communities together. And how do you plan, I guess I'd start with you, Mr. Proper, since you had the wherewithal to go to college in Minnesota. How do you plan on continuing to leverage local broadcasting to reach NHL fans like Wild fans?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for acknowledging the Minnesota roots. I didn't realize it would work to my benefit. So in the NHL, we are currently still operating under the RSN system in many markets. So that's the cable system or the RSNs, but as everybody's, regional sports networks. But as everybody's talked about, those continue to lose subs, and as a result, they're going to a D2C model that complements their cable distribution. In addition, our teams have looked carefully, as I mentioned briefly, at broadcast, and a number of our teams are on full broadcast networks in the local markets. Other teams, we have one team that's gone on a completely free, actually two, completely free digital distribution. So that's basically everybody can get it for free if they have internet access. And everybody has some form of D2C, meaning direct-to-consumer model, that has a pay model except the 2 that have it for free that is available over the internet. So what we have done is, through our various markets, attempted to try and test and move forward with every different type of model that currently exists. We expect that we will get a much better sense of what the future holds and what really works as we move forward. But we have teams in every market that are doing different things as we try to figure out exactly what the future will be. What I can tell you is, hopefully what gives you some comfort is the most important thing to us in any of the leagues is growth, which is all focused on accessibility and affordability.
Mr. Gersh, same question.
Thank you. It's a great question. We are obviously very focused on making sure local fans can watch their games. And as we've all talked about here today, the pay TV industry in general and the RSNs in particular that have traditionally been the way that fans are able to watch their local games have been suffering massive disruption. We saw that coming, and we wanted to make sure that our fans never were penalized for what was going on in the marketplace. So we built up the infrastructure ourselves to be able to produce and distribute games. And so for the Twins, for example, when their RSN had financial difficulties, they were in bankruptcy. They've come
I
out of
remember the whole thing.
yeah. So we took over the production and distribution of those, and we essentially follow a 3-pronged strategy, which is, one, to get as much distribution as we can still from the pay TV industry, and so those games are now on Comcast and DirecTV. We also distribute a package of those games, about 10 games, over the air, so fans can watch some games if they don't want to subscribe to anything, and it gives fans a promotional ability to see where their games will be on. And then we offer the direct-to-consumer package, so anyone who does want it and wants to watch all the games can sign up directly to do so.
Yeah, okay, and I'll ask you that question in writing, Mr. Koenig, because I did want to ask you, and I will follow up on some of these local issues. I just think it's so important. Last July, as you noted, WNBA, we love the Lynx, signed this historic deal, $2.2 billion, although we note the men's deal is $76 billion, and you noted that there could be some add-ons for more. Could you talk about that? Just because I think they are such a fast-moving, popular sport that putting it in one slice of time for the women seems like, well, this is historic. What was it like a few years ago, I wonder? Just this changeover in the valuation.
The change in the market, just like the rise in popularity, exploded in the last couple of years, Senator. You're right. What I would say is, and we were mindful of the growing popularity of the WNBA. So in the 3 deals that we did last year, even though they were record numbers in terms of the finances that you referred to, we put in certain provisions to provide for upside in those deals. So for example, there's a revenue sharing component that if advertising revenues exceed a certain level in each of the deals, the WNBA benefits incrementally. There's also a provision that after 3 years, there's essentially a reset, a relook at the value in those deals, because they are long-term, and if the league is continuing to take off, we would like another chance to negotiate. And the third thing with the other, just to answer your question, we have other deals that we can do with other broadcasters and other,
Thank you for bringing up the local. Yes. I hope you continue that. I just want to, I'm going to put this on the record, Chair, because I know we're out of time, but for you, Mr. Bergmayer, I think it's important to focus on, first of all, that fans can get their sports, but when you look at the costs, say the NFL Sunday Ticket, YouTube TV, ESPN Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Peacock, a single season, $850 for the 2024 season alone, which is really hard when it used to be on local broadcast. And also just some of the Disney Warner Fox Sports deal that was called off due to antitrust concerns. And, I want fans to stream their sports, but we also want to make sure that consumers benefit from low prices and innovation comes from competition. So look forward to getting your answers in writing. I'm sorry, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of you for being here. In Tennessee, we love our sports teams also. And Mr. Koenig, I want to come to you because through the years, looked at the NBA's relationship with oppressive regimes around the globe. And of course, you all have had quite a cozy relationship with the CCP, and we know how they censor. And going back to 2019 with Daryl Morey's tweet in support of the Hong Kong freedom fighters, and that resulted in the suspension of NBA broadcast on their state-run media channels. And in recent years, it appears that you all have patched that relationship up, which means there had to be some sort of deal that was there, and it must have been quite a deal. So since we're talking about broadcast rights and what they're worth, why don't you tell me what the broadcast rights in China are worth, and how much NBA owners have invested in China?
Thank you, Senator. The NBA does have a very long history of distributing our games and content in China for more than 30 years.
No, I'm not asking about the length of time you've been in China. I'm asking, what are the media rights worth? You're the president of Global Content and Media Distribution. So what are those rights worth, and how much have the NBA owners invested in China?
The NBA does not comment publicly on the financial terms of our relationships in the U.S. or abroad, but I can comment that you are accurate that in light of the tweet that Daryl Morey made in 2019.
You had to cut a deal.
No, we did not cut a deal.
Oh, you did?
No, we did not cut a deal. What happened was the games were taken off of CCTV. You're right. The games continued to air on Tencent and other distribution outlets in China. And then after more than a year.
So did you make any concessions on free speech?
No, to the contrary.
None at all. Because the estimates are that these media rights are worth hundreds of millions of dollars to you all, and that NBA team owners have invested as much as $10 billion. And I think some clarity around those numbers would be important. The other thing that we look at is human rights, and we look at how the NBA has punished players who have spoken out against human rights abusers in China. Enes Kanter Freedom, one specifically. So can you commit to me that in every deal the NBA makes around the globe, that the league is upholding human rights and that the league is upholding freedom of speech, and they're upholding the American ideals of freedom? Can you make that commitment?
Senator, I can certainly confirm that one of the NBA's most important values is freedom of speech. And in fact, the example you cited before of Daryl Morey, he was not disciplined or censored in any way in light of the comments that he made. And you're right, that comment may have led to the lack of coverage by CCTV and other things. But no, we very much value freedom of speech, and that's something that I can confirm, and it's something that's one of our...
What about your actions in Rwanda? You're the global president. You ought to have an answer on that one. Mr. Proper, let me come to you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of the things that we are concerned about, and Senator Klobuchar touched on this, is pirated broadcasts that are available. And the Predators are mighty popular in Tennessee. People love going to those games. And as we were looking at this, I think it's $28 billion in potential revenue loss that is there from pirated. So tell me what you're doing to combat the rise of these illegal sports streaming because, you know, the players aren't benefiting from that.
Thank you, Senator. It's a great question, and it's something that everybody struggles with. The fact of the matter is, we have an outside service that helps us to track pirated broadcasts. We work with our broadcast partners. We have gotten orders of court that have allowed us in certain markets to stop these pirated broadcasts. But at the end of the day, many of them come from foreign jurisdictions. They are what we affectionately refer to as whack-a-mole. You knock one down and two more pop up, but you can rest assured that everybody's trying to do the best they can worldwide. But any tools that come available to us, we will all use, because it is a definite drag on our industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Lujan.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much to all of our witnesses that are here. Thank you for being here. Now, I recognize this hearing was convened to talk about sports broadcasting and brought the experts together today. However, I want to ask some specific questions about an issue that is currently going on. And I just simply can't ignore what President Trump's unlawful executive order that attempts to kneecap the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and its funding of PBS and NPR. Now, let me be clear, the president's actions show a callous disregard for the law. Congress passed a law in 1967 that established the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's independence. Here are a couple facts. CPB is a nonprofit private corporation. Congress formed CPB this way to insulate it from government control. The board members are not officers of the United States. Board members and their decisions cannot be controlled by the government. Board members do not serve at the pleasure of the president. CPB provides critical operational support for nearly 1,500 locally owned and operated public television and radio stations that reach virtually every household in the country in 2024 alone. CPB provided nearly $6 million in total support to 3 public TV stations and 12 public stations in New Mexico alone. Yet despite all the facts, the president has plowed ahead with his attacks on the corporation. As a result, he and his administration have threatened access to local news, children's educational programming, and emergency alerts that broadcasters provide to communities. Now, Mr. Bergmayer, as you heard, I'm concerned about the Trump administration's attacks on public media and defunding NPR and PBS. Can you explain why NPR and PBS are important?
Yes, Senator, thanks for the question. Of course, as we discussed today, people should be able to access their local teams, but obviously important local news, commercial-free children's programming, and emergency alerts are important too. Public broadcasting provides this, and CPB funding is important for stations in rural areas in particular. These areas typically have less broadband coverage to households, and people can tune into the radio in places where there is no wireless coverage at all. And especially as commercial stations are often struggling as local ad dollars shift to online platforms like Facebook, I think it really underscores the importance of other models to provide the kinds of information that these stations provide.
If Congress allows this to happen, are people going to have the same access to local news, educational programming, and emergency alerts?
I think not. I think in particular, there's going to be many news deserts if these stations shut down.
Now, Mr. Bergmayer, the public radio network reaches about 99% of the American population. This makes it a critical backbone for the nation's emergency alert system. The majority of public radio stations in New Mexico receive CPB grants and support 30 to 50% of their budgets. Some of these are also tribal stations and serve as links to isolated tribal communities back home. Now, one of the questions that I have here is, if the Trump administration is successful in cutting funding to these public stations, will the stations exist? And I would note that study after study showed New Mexico and Alaska have something common in this particular space with the number of stations that we benefit from with these repeaters, investments that are made by these entities. We just had some of the most horrific fires in New Mexico's history. As a matter of fact, it was a local station that was able to partner with some of these. It's an AM radio station, and I appreciate what Chair Cruz is doing to make sure AM radio is going to stay in every car in America as well, because it was the AM radio that was warning the citizens that they needed to move. The signals were down, there was no electricity, phones weren't working, nothing. The only thing that worked were these repeaters and what was happening with AM as well. What happens to the ability for these isolated communities to receive alerts if all this goes away?
Senator, you're right. The coverage of radio is hard to beat, and although funding for public media is only about 0.01% of federal spending for particular stations, particularly in rural areas, it's a significant portion of their budget.
So as my colleagues are looking to identify funding streams for moving and advancing President Trump's tax policy, my question comes back to the major league teams in America. We're having this discussion about how constituents across the country can get access to games. There's more and more deals being put together with streaming, where people have to cough up more bucks out of their pocket to be able to get the stream. There's tax policy, if I'm not mistaken, that all of you benefit from the United States. Am I correct in that, Mr. Gersh?
I'm not sure exactly what tax policy you're referring to.
Mr. Koenig?
Neither am I.
I am also not
That's
aware.
good. So to my colleagues, they don't even know the tax deferment policy that they get advantages when they're investing in stadiums with the revenue stream for the leagues. There might be another pay for that you all can find if they don't even know what this is. The reason I was asking this question is, if that tax policy is going to continue, people should be able to get to watch games. My constituents and I love our favorite teams and love enjoying them and watching teams. I have a buddy now that is collecting cards at an incredible pace, and he's opened up a new business because of the success of players and the support of them with their marketing and things of that nature. I'm surprised that you're not familiar with that. I'll do my due diligence to be able to get each of you a report from the Congressional Research Service that explains the tax policy that benefits major league sporting teams in America. I yield, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad we're having this hearing. So many things that we talk about in Washington, back home, nobody cares about. But this one, actually, people do care about a lot because they want to be able to watch their favorite teams. And I'm going to probably limit my questions to Mr. Gersh. It's too soon, Mr. Proper, to talk about the NHL, given what happened to the Blues with 1.7 seconds left in Winnipeg in Game 7. It's just too soon, so maybe another day. But as we were talking beforehand, as a Cardinals fan and somebody who probably has way too much of an emotional reaction to a blown save in an April day game, this is what I do. Like this, I mean, I can't live in the political all the time. So baseball, the Cardinals is ultimately my great distraction, and we've been really lucky on the radio side.
And if you're looking to recruit, he swings a bat really well.
Yes, my time has passed, Mr. Chairman, I believe, but. You know, Harry Carey and Jack Buck and Mike Shannon, and I've got the MLB app to just listen to the radio games when I'm barbecuing for my family outside. I mean, this is just, it's the cadence of the summer. It is, the rhythm of the game is something that, it is America's pastime, and it's, in St. Louis at least, it's almost like a civic religion. It's passed down from one generation to the next. And I'm 49, so I'm a Gen Xer, and I feel like I've seen all of the phases of all this, right? You've got, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, the only game, you know, you could listen on the radio, but the only game you could maybe pick up was the NBC Game of the Week with, you know, Vin Scully and St. Louis and Joe Garagiola broadcasting those games. And then, you know, there was a time where the thinking was the more games you broadcast, maybe people wouldn't actually go attend the games. And of course, that wasn't true. And then you get into the regional sports networks. ESPN starts broadcasting more games. St. Louis and Kansas City have some of the highest ratings when the regional sports networks existed. And now we're in this new phase. And I'm someone that would have the MLB app for radio. I would only during baseball season, when I cut the cord, actually buy the cable subscription, which was really expensive, just to see the Cardinal games when I was at home. And we gravitated, you know, at first I had Sling because they carried the Cardinals. Then it went to YouTube TV because they had the Cardinals, and then they didn't have the Cardinals. So it's been a journey for a lot of fans. So I guess in the time that we have remaining, I just wanted to ask you, where is all this headed? Because people want to see the games. The demise of you know, the regional sports networks. We've got now, I can, you know, I'm on Amazon. I can get the Cardinal games on Amazon. This is the first year you can do that with the Prime package. Are we headed to a place where the teams have their own platforms, or maybe that doesn't work because you don't have the scale. But where is this all headed? Because it feels like, especially for baseball, it's been a little bit in flux the last couple of years, and this is the question I get a lot, like, what's going on with all this stuff? So in your view, what's happening? Where's this headed?
Sure, that's a great question. First of all, thank you for your fandom and your continued support. We certainly appreciate that. We are at this transitory time in the media ecosystem, and we are at the point now where the Cardinals, like many other clubs, are on their regional sports network, and at least there is now a direct-to-consumer service, which in this case is FanDuel Sportsnet, which you can buy directly from them or through Amazon Prime. Where this is going is a great question, and I think, as the commissioner has stated, he is looking to get to a more national product. I think we would like to see more of our games available more broadly, more nationally, and then kind of have one place where fans know to go to watch their games that aren't being broadcast nationally. And so as we look to the next couple of years, our main rights deals come up after the 28th season. That's what we're looking to achieve, is a place where whether it's a national streaming package or MLB Network becomes the home of local baseball, but where there's one place that you go to know where your games are that aren't being broadcast nationally.
So that would look like something like the MLB app. You subscribe, and everyone then has access to their home market games, and I guess it wouldn't matter if you're traveling to DC and I want to watch the Cardinals. I'm not limited by the potential blackout, right? So there's a one-stop shop that MLB actually owns. Is that?
Yeah, whether MLB
I'm not trying to ask you to get too far ahead, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's certainly one potential outcome. It may be the MLB app. It may be that we partner with an Amazon or an Apple or YouTube or one of the other major streaming services, and they become the home of baseball. But I think the idea is to make it simpler for fans. We do understand the fan frustration now. We take that very seriously. There's nothing more important to us than making sure fans know exactly where to go to watch their game.
One final question while I got you. So I think every sport sort of translates a little bit differently to television. I mean, football is sort of just like, it works really well on the screen. Hockey, I would argue, in person, a playoff hockey game in person is so fast. It's hard to, sometimes it doesn't, and you don't have to comment, it doesn't translate on TV, but when you're there, it's incredible. Baseball is kind of this middle ground. With younger people now, with the scrolling and how the short YouTube clips and all this stuff, baseball is a longer form game. I'm just curious, how does baseball view appealing to younger viewers, knowing that their viewing habits are a little different?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the changes that we've made over the past couple of years, is to, the institution of the pitch clock and the restriction on the shift, and the bigger bases trying to make more action. And I think we've seen the results of that. Ratings have been up, attendance has been up. I actually think our general fan age is younger than we're given credit for, because we moved a lot of our fans to digital sort of earlier than others, and it got a little bit lost in the ratings. But we are definitely focused on that, and I think we've made a lot of improvements to the games over the past couple of years that are now paying dividends.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you to the witnesses. I'm just trying to follow up on that last point, particularly about the consumer experience and what you just mentioned, Mr. Gersh. So are you saying that you guys track and have metrics on fan frustration and input from consumers?
Yeah, I don't know that it's specific metrics or data, but it's certainly something we hear. I mean, we get, when a fan has MLB.TV, if the game that they're looking to watch is in their local market and they get blacked out, we hear about that. And so those are things that we're trying to address.
When you negotiate media rights, are you negotiating both broadcast and streaming rights?
Yes.
Okay, and so by doing that, you're limiting competition right there, right? I mean, the old model, broadcasting rights, everybody would bid and then you would decide. And then in the broadcast model, you just rented my eyeballs, that's it. You made me watch a lot of ads, but you didn't cost me anything, right? So you had a competition, everybody bid, you decided what bid you wanted, and then basically I got to watch it for free, although I had to watch some commercials. Now, because you negotiate and you limit the streaming rights, you're limiting the competition and you're creating the cost to the consumer. And I would say it'd be interesting if you were helping local media out by keeping broadcast rights with local media so that the team could negotiate with local syndicate and broadcasters. But in reality, what you're doing is basically you're using your marketability that we gave you on antitrust to leverage those broadcast rights and limit the streaming media rights, which could provide true competition to you. And so that's what you're hearing from everybody here. Everybody here has been through this experience. I bet you every single member of this committee has been through this experience where they thought they were going to get something and they couldn't get it. And so the question is whether we should continue to give you this antitrust exemption if in fact you're going to use your market power on broadcast to also limit market competition on streaming and not have the old model of broadcast competition anyway. So you don't have the broadcast competition, now you have this new streaming tool, and you're basically clobbering the consumer, making everything more expensive, and I'll bet you don't have data. So yeah, you get into a fight with a local broadcaster, and then you black out a bunch of people, and they're also mad about that. But no, you're not collecting data, you're collecting checks. That's what you're collecting. You're collecting revenue. Mr. Bergmayer, am I saying this correctly about the lack of competition and why we should reconsider this in the context of the?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think in particular in return for the various public benefits that leagues and teams receive, that there should be an obligation to make sure that the games are widely accessible and competitive.
So I don't think they police any of this. So you then, because you control both the streaming and the broadcast rights, then you sell something to somebody. They do a horrible job of saying whether they really have the content. They advertise that they have the content, and then you pay, and you signed up for 6 months of the subscription. Yeah, how many people have time to get out of that when you go on and they don't really have the game? So there's just so much happening here. So what is your suggesting, Mr. Bergmayer, that what should we do now to help consumers out, since we have too much control here and not enough focus on the consumer? You know, I mean, most people would say, I want everybody to watch this stuff because I believe in the brand. I'm pretty sure the Mariners would want everybody to watch. You know, they like their players and they would like people to see them. So
I tend to think that the best balance is to just think about the difference between the local team in a community and then the out-of-market national type games. And I think it is a complete reasonable request of policymakers at the state, local, and federal level to say, in exchange for the public support you get, in exchange for the unique market power characteristics that teams have that make them very different than other entertainment products, that they work to make sure that games in the local market are available free of charge in some way, supported by ads like they were for decades.
So you would go that route? You think that's the most critical aspect of this?
I think taking care of the local fans and local markets is where I would have my first priority.
Yeah, that's music to my ears because I care about local broadcasting. I think the demise of local broadcasting is a big problem in the United States of America, and you have to have community. And what better way to build community than around a sports team? What about this issue of antitrust as it relates to the fact that these guys really, they strangled it for a long time. They strangled streaming because they wanted to control it too, and at the behest of trying to keep cable and keep broadcast. But now you're back to they're just not doing an effective job of monitoring the people they sell the streaming rights or enable the streaming rights to, and thereby the consumer gets clobbered with a bunch of nonsense where they can't access what they really wanted. So what do you do about that?
Yeah, I think there are reasons why you want to have there to be some coordination in the negotiation of media rights for leagues. So that does make sense, but it can't just be for free. I think it needs to be in exchange for a clear public benefit. And I think that benefit would be availability of games in local markets for free and working to reduce the confusion and fragmentation of games and just like looking to keep the costs down overall.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about out of state. I'm thinking about out of market games, right? Or somebody who wants to follow. I'm saying that's, to me, that's a little different, and I see my time has expired. But if you could help us for the record on this, I think there's just too much here where they can just think about the dollar instead of thinking about the true consumer experience. And so I like your suggestion on local broadcasting, but I still think we need something on the streaming media side that says we have a little bit more responsibility to the consumer to make sure that the consumer experience isn't hijacked behind 6 months of a larger subscription that may or may not be related. But I'll write something for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Moreno.
Well, thank you for being here, Chairman. Thank you for putting on the hearing. So question to the three league representatives. What are your metrics? You have to have metrics, right, in terms of how many, and you talked about that a little bit in your testimony, but what are your metrics in terms of how you see the amount of games accessible? Is that something that you track in terms of being able to make decisions as to what you're doing in terms of, obviously, there's not really free games, just to be crystal clear. There's games that you view with advertising paying for that privilege. But I'm curious what your metrics are. Start with you, Mr. Gersh.
Sure. If I understand your question, you're talking about how the games are, the metrics on availability of the games. And I think, what we've looked at is what percentage of the fans in the home television territory can watch the games and how are they available. And, historically, they've been on RSNs, on pay TV distributed platforms. And as I mentioned before, less and less people have been signing up for pay TV. And then on the pay TV systems, they've been either higher tiered or not carried at all. So we've been concerned where we've had, in some cases, only 35% of the fans in our territory could get access to those games. So that's why we took a really strong look at this the past couple of years, and Commissioner Manfred's, view to make the games more accessible, where we now have direct-to-consumer offerings available in 29 territories. So for us, that covers the whole territory. For $20 a month, you can watch.
I'm talking about that you don't have to pay a subscription, that you can watch the game with ads. What's your current metric, and where has that gone down or has that gone up? Has accessibility increased or decreased?
It's actually, again, since I've been involved over the past 2 decades, all the games have been on paid TV. There weren't a lot of freely available broadcast games for Major League Baseball. So it has increased over the past couple of years. And that now a majority of our teams do make at least a package of the games available on free over-the-air TV, whether it's 10 or 20 games, they make those available. And at the national level, we have our World Series and the All-Star Game. Our biggest events are on Fox Broadcasting, which is a freely available channel. And then we've been experimenting with new ways to make games for free. So our partnership with Roku, the games that we put on our Sunday morning, are freely available with no subscription.
So you don't have a target X percentage of games are available without paying subscriptions, and you're trying to get that number to increase?
We do not have a particular metric on that.
Okay. Mr. Koenig?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, as I said, the availability of games on free over-the-air television is very important to us. So on the national level, we have 70, in our new deals that'll start next year, 75 regular season games, and almost, depending on how long the playoff series goes, another 40, 50 games available on free broadcast television, which is the most in NBA history, and second maybe only to the NFL of any league, and it was something that was a real priority in our negotiations. In local television, 3 years ago, there was one team that put its games out on over-the-air television, number of games available on free over-the-air television, a total of 570 games on free over-the-air television locally, which is the most in 20 years in the NBA.
So you're seeing that number go up?
Absolutely.
And you track that and you watch that?
Yes.
Mr. Proper?
So we totally agree with you, Senator Moreno. We are looking very extensively in how we can increase our over-the-air. Now, on a national basis, that's a bit of a partnership where we have our relationships with ABC, for example, and it becomes however many games we can get on with windows we try to. But as Mr. Koenig said, at the local level, it's really increased dramatically with the demise of the RSN business. And what we have seen is we now have 3 teams whose all of their games are available over the air locally. We have others who are very much exploring that, and then that model, and I think others that will adopt it. We've also had teams adopting or trying out the model of making it available for free on the internet. So where they can't get necessarily the over-the-air coverage for all of their games, they're trying to make every game free as an internet product, which is a unique model that's just in its infancy.
Gotcha. In my short time remaining, I'd just ask you, the 3 of you to respond pretty quickly. Actually, the 4 of you to respond really quickly. It seems this is, with technology, an infinitely solvable problem Because if I'm signed up for a streaming service, I use some sort of identity validation of who I am. Why would you penalize that person and not just make it so that you sign up in one place with that same credential, it allows you to sign up in all of them and allow, for example, Amazon, well, they know too much about me, but they know that I'm a Max subscriber, so they don't charge me for Max also. Why don't you look at solutions like that? Because it seems to me, for you want to make this easier for your fans.
So we agree with that. And in fact, if you buy MLB.TV on Amazon, you can authenticate and watch it on our platform.
But not the local piece, though. It should automatically carry across all platforms in every way possible.
I agree with that completely. It's just an issue of rights and getting the other side to do that. At MLB, we've integrated with ESPN and Fox and all our cable distributors so that people can watch on our platform if they subscribe through pay TV. 100% agree with you that more of that should happen.
I'm over time, but let me just say this. My 2 cents. You guys solving this problem and making it more available, easier, and less friction will be dramatically less painful than if this institution decides to give you rules and guardrails. So option 1, you solve it and it's great. Option B, not so great.
Thank you. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz. I want to thank Ranking Member Cantwell, and I'm really pleased you're holding this hearing on such an important and emerging issue. Well, because my state, of course, Nevada, but we have Las Vegas, and Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. We're home to all-star music performances, live shows, international events. Over the past several years, we've started to become the sports capital of the world as well, from hosting major UFC fights to being home of the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix. And we've seen Major League Sports become a bigger and bigger part of the Vegas sports and entertainment scene as well. In fact, our first major professional sports team, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, established less than a decade ago. And of course, I am proud to say, I think tonight is the first game of round 2 in the playoffs. So I was traveling yesterday, so I make sure, I think it's tonight. So anyway, go Knights, they're in the playoffs. We are so proud of them. And they are beloved in Las Vegas. They're a tremendous success they've enjoyed in their first 7 seasons in the NHL. It's unprecedented for an expansion team. And the success doesn't end there. Our Las Vegas Aces won back-to-back WNBA championships in 2023. We added an NFL team when the Raiders opened their brand new state-of-the-art Allegiant Stadium in 2020. And last year we hosted a fantastic Super Bowl for the first time. And next up, we have the A's bringing Major League Baseball to the great state of Nevada in 2028. Someday soon, I'm hoping that we'll add an NBA team as well. But just as Nevada's sports environment is changing, how fans watch their team is changing. So Golden Knights, they've been doing a lot of innovation. So over the past 2 NHL seasons, thanks to an agreement between the Golden Knights and Scripps, fans across Nevada are able to watch the Knights free of charge over the air on local broadcast television. The Knights have continued to innovate, creating an app experience called Nighttime, where fans can access all Knights games live on their devices. So, Mr. Proper, can you speak to how the NHL views the ability of teams to make these types of deals and to innovate with new ways to respond to fan demands, and how these flexibilities really just benefit the fan experience, especially the local fan base, right?
Absolutely, and great point, Senator Rosen. We have been very, very positive in working with our clubs to find new models, and the Vegas Knights model is an absolutely outstanding one, we think, for fans across the board. As you mentioned, every game's over the air for free with Scripps, other than the national games. You also have the ability to buy the package if you want to buy it as a digital product. But what it's also allowed them to do is grow the business and grow what they're trying to do, grow their fan base. So what we've seen is that in their first year switching from the RSN model, they had a 700% increase in their ratings. What they have been able to do in terms of growing the fan base, particularly for a relatively new team, has been off the charts of what we've been trying to accomplish with every one of our teams. And so what we have seen is this model has completely been vindicated as both affordable for fans, greater accessibility, and ultimately growing the fan base for the Knights, which has been their primary goal in doing these types of deals.
Yeah, it's been tremendous for Las Vegas and for them. And so I want to talk about innovation in other leagues. So Mr. Gersh and Mr. Koenig, I want to give you the opportunity as well. How do the MLB and NBA, as well as their teams, plan to meet the moment here? And are there new models that you can point to in creativity and delivering to consumer demands? Mr. Koenig.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, the example of the Knights and the Aces too, which are on broadcast television, seems to be a trend.
We love our teams in Nevada.
and as well you should. And is a trend that we see more and more in this time of disruption in the cable universe. More and more teams, as I've mentioned, have returned to broadcast television. And it's kind of a hybrid approach for the people who watch through traditional television. More games on free over-the-air stations is certainly a benefit. And for the people who are digital natives who maybe never subscribe to pay television, having the games, every game also available through streaming platforms, which is something that the WNBA and the NBA teams are increasingly doing. All but one of our teams has all of their games available on a streaming platform, local games. We find that latter enables us to do a couple of things. It allows us to provide a lot more choice and personalization in different audio, video feeds and fantasy and things like that. But what it also enables us to do, which is something that we've discussed with other senators, is provide access and discoverability in a world that's more and more fragmented. That digital, the NBA app and the WNBA app, for example, can be the entry point. You may not know which channel the Aces are on if it's on a national game, but if you go to the WNBA app, you will be able to click right on the game and go directly there. If it's on a digital platform, you'll be able to access the games. And we're going to even do that beyond just the NBA and WNBA apps. We're going to do that through a number of other partner and team relationships. You might be able, when you order food to watch a game, you'll have an opportunity to click from that food delivery app directly to a game telecast. We're working all this out to make it, because one of the issues that this committee rightfully focused on in calling this hearing is fragmentation. And we think there are a lot of ways to deal with that, particularly through the digital distribution.
Mr. Gersh, if you go quickly, I'm over my time, but we don't want to leave out baseball.
Right. I will say I agree with what both my colleagues have said. And with the athletics in particular, one of the other ways we're giving optionality is their direct-to-consumer service is both available directly right on MLB.TV this year if you just want to buy the athletic games. And then we also let NBC put it on Peacock as an upsell to Peacock if you want the full RSN. So just continuing to find ways to give fans more options to watch their games is what we're focused on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would mention if the NBA could somehow reduce Steph Curry's shooting percentage, that would really help for my Rockets, who went through a very painful series. And I'd also like to check to see if Mr. Curry is in fact a space alien. And with that, I recognize Senator Markey.
Yeah, that shooting did ruin this year's bet between the chairman and the senator from Massachusetts. I won last year's bet on the Dallas Celtics series. And I was hoping, actually, yeah, that Steph Curry's shooting percentage should go down. And by the way, that the Celtics shooting percentage should go up a little bit from last night and three-pointers, okay? And I think that will occur. So we thank you all for being here. As an avid sports fan, I know the frustration of having to keep up and pay for numerous apps to watch your favorite team. But today I want to address a related but urgent threat to public access to media more broadly. Last week, President Trump unleashed a series of attacks on public media and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, including an executive order that attempted to force the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to cease funding for PBS and NPR. He also proposed to end all funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in his 2026 budget request. Eliminating the Corporation for Public Broadcasting would devastate hundreds of local public media stations that rely on CPB to serve their communities, especially in rural and low-income areas. From Arthur to PBS NewsHour, from tornado alerts to rural states to local debates in city halls, public media has always been there, not because it turns a profit, but because it serves the public. These stations connect our country from rural towns to urban centers and provide news and culture and children's programming without commercial influence. Cutting off CPB funding won't hurt elites in Washington. It will hurt children in underserved classrooms who rely on PBS Kids. PBS is the children's television network from 6 a.m. in the morning, and children for generations of all races, all incomes have relied upon the public broadcasting system to provide that information. It will hurt seniors in rural communities who trust their local public radio stations for news and weather and emergency information. It will hurt the civic fabric of this nation at a time when polarization and division are already corroding our shared sense of truth. Mr. Bergmayer, do you agree that public media plays a vital role in ensuring all Americans, regardless of income or geography or race, have access to trustworthy information?
I do, Senator, and I believe it's especially important in rural areas throughout the country.
Do you agree that public media plays an important role in ensuring that children of all ages and backgrounds have access to educational and enriching programming, which has served generations of American children?
Yes, I do, and as a parent, my kids loved PBS programming. I think non-commercial children's programming is very important.
Do you agree that public broadcasters play a central role in communicating emergency information during extreme weather or any other emergency?
Yes, I do.
So thank you for that. Okay, we're going to have a major debate here in the Congress over the role of the public broadcasting system, NPR and PBS and all of those local stations. This is a debate we're going to have, and I just think it's very important that everyone understand that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting represents a promise that every American, no matter their income or their background or their zip code, deserves access to free, absolutely free education, culture, local reporting, and trusted information. We must reject this attempt to silence the truth and instead recommit to the public interest, to local storytelling, and to the democratic values that public broadcasting has upheld for generations. And we must protect the children, especially the poorest children in our society, who may not have access to all of the apps that we've been hearing today, but do have access for free to the public broadcasting of their local communities. The American people are not asking us to defund Big Bird. They are asking us to defend Big Bird and all that it represents in our society's history. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Markey. I want to thank each of the witnesses for your testimony today. Senators will have until the close of business on Tuesday, May 13th, to submit questions for the record. The witnesses will have until the end of the day on Tuesday, May 27th, to respond to those questions. And that concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned.